In this video, I will be going over how to create this curvature on the shoe. Kind of this toe lifts up, so we create a curvature. I'll be showing you guys how to create the low poly version of the sole to later on be baked, whether it be Substance Painter or Photoshop to bake on the normals. So first thing we're going to do is we will actually start to create the low poly version of the shoe. So I'm going to hide this reference for now, since we don't really need it at this time. So I'll hide that, and we'll be just basing our shoe, our low poly off this sole here. So I froze it so that I don't select it by accident. I'm just going to start off with a simple plane. I'm actually going to start kind of towards the middle and go all the way across. So it doesn't have to be huge. And make sure it's a color that you can see well. So I'm going to stick with this red color, and then I'm going to convert this to an edible poly. Oops. There you go. So I can move these vertexes around to better fill, to better match the shape. And then, as we were doing earlier, I'm going to use my edge selection, and actually so I can see this better, I'm going to pull this just a little bit below, a little further below the tread here. So back to my bottom view by hitting B. I go to my edge selection, or click 2, and then once I have that, I'm going to hit W to enable my move tool, and holding shift I can just drag out new polygons. And so the way I'll do this, I'm going to actually drag this, hold shift, and we'll drag this all the way to about here. And then I'm going to drag across, select these two edges, and connect those. And we'll connect them a number of times. So let's say same about, in this case, maybe 8. And each, everyone's situation will be a little different. So you're just going to try to match the curvature of the shoe as best you can. So the idea here is to create the shape, something, the kind of silhouette that looks true to it. So if it's round, make it round. Don't feel like you have to limit yourself so much on the polygon count. But either way, like we're going to be converting this, potentially 250,000 polygon model down significantly to something that can be manageable on all formats, whether it be mobile, or if it's even if it is something based off a PC, it still will preserve a resource when it comes to our application. So I'm just going to finish this off right here. Okay, so you see that's there. And now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go up to the top. I'm going to start to drag this one out. I'm going to drag this to the end like I did before. Select these. I'm going to connect these. 8 seems to work for me in this situation as well. So again, just drag the vertex to the edge of the sole to match what we had created in the high poly version. So keep in mind, naming conventions are important. Right now, this is called plain. I will be renaming this to tread HP for high poly, and that'll just let me know that I have my high poly version. I'll be calling it LP, sorry, for low poly. So this, again, let me know that this is the low poly version. What I'll be using later on. Getting close here. So I'm not really crazy about this here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna actually, I think I'll move this down a little bit, and then I'll just add one more. So it's my edge selection. I'm gonna connect these two, and keep in mind it was 8, so I'll have to put it back down to 1, and then I will be able to just select that single one. I think it's gonna look a little nicer. Okay. So now I need to do the soles here, and before I do that, I'm actually going to select all the vertical and all the edges go up and down. I'm gonna connect those. Actually, I want to connect it. I think 3 times should be pretty good. In fact, actually, we don't even need to do that many times. We can go and just select. So you go to your edge selection, and we'll just continue to taper this down a little bit at a time. So it's just like with our vertex, our move tools, we'll continue to move this in. So again, move that a little more, and eventually you'll probably get to a point where you will want just to make a, or perhaps you'll want to turn this into a point by just selecting these two and then welding these together like that. I'm gonna move this up just a hair. Actually, maybe I'll go ahead and chamfer those out again. So I just want to try to make it as close to true as possible for this low poly version. As you see there, it has the correct silhouette. It looks smooth, and it's not too jagged. So that's kind of the idea here, is to create something that looks smooth. If it is, don't be concerned about being so low poly, because you really are reducing this quite a bit already. So I mean, if it's round, then make it round. Simple as that. Okay. And just work this one down how we did the last one. Just kind of have a little bit at a time, finesse it in. Alright, go back a little bit. There you go. Okay, and then here I'm just going to drag this in a little more. Drag this one in a little bit more. That seems to be pretty good. Okay. So now we have the bottom of our sole. Pretty nice and tight. What we want to do next is we want to actually select the border. Okay, so now with the border selected, holding with your move tool enabled, hold shift and drag up, and we want to have this actually line up with that here. But before we do that, I will suggest, or move this whole entire item up, and enable your snap toggle, and snap this right along the, let's see if I can find, so you want to snap it along the bottom of the sole. So just click on one of the edges, just like that. Okay, and now we're going to select this top edge we just created and snap that right there. So they should be overlapping pretty well. as you can see there. See a little bit of gray from the other shape, and so this looks like it's going to bake really nicely. Now, one other thing I would suggest is I'm going to hide this. I would recommend selecting this portion here. Okay, and so what we're going to do here is we're going to soften this edge just a little bit. So I'm going to, after all that corner stuff, I'm going to chamfer it. I just want to chamfer just enough to give it a little bit of, just like that. So then it's going to allow it to have a little bit of a softer edge opposed to that really sharp edge we had. So, yep, perfect. Okay. Now I'm going to select all the outside, and I'm actually going to grow it one time. And then what I'm going to do from here is I'm going to assign it a smoothing group. So I'll just make that 1, and then holding Control I will actually invert it and assign that, hit clear and assign it smoothing group number 2. So now you'll see it looks very smooth, opposed to earlier looking a little jagged. So we now have the low poly created. Next I will select our low poly model again, go to our modify list and add a unwrap UVW modifier to it. And a quick way to do this would just be so you hit the quick peel, and that'll do that. But also once you're in there, you can go flatten by smoothing groups, which we just assigned. So you should be able to have a nice flat shoe, because that was group 2 we assigned. Then all of these are going to be group 1. But I will recommend splitting that group up. So way I recommend doing that is selecting selecting 2 edges. So maybe something like this edge here, saying the front, and then saying the back. And the reason I say 2 is because it'll make it a little bit shorter, a little easier to manage. So once you select those 2 edges, you can go to break, and then now you want to select everything in here in your edit window, and then you just want to go down to your pack. I'm going to go pack custom, because that's how I like to pack my items. I'm going to so on pack custom, I like to do non-convex padding, just 0.01, and then check mark everything. So I'll just pack everything nice and tight. And if you want to see how it looks, you can check that right there. So you can see our checker pattern is nice and squared, and it's even, so it's going to look how we like. Although I do notice the back looks a little long, so actually what I'm going to do here is I'm going to select this all, I'm going to go to Tools, and I'm going to Relax. Let's see if that helps a little bit. Okay, well it looks like it is doing a little bit. So now I want to select this section here. I'm going to under the reshape elements, straighten selection, and I'll do the same for the other strip. So now you can see here the squares look a lot more even. So again, I'm going to select all, and then go to my pack custom, and we're good there. So now this is unwrapped, and we're good to go to the next portion, which will be to so I'm going to convert to a poly, and I'm going to go to this tread here, and then I can hide this. Okay, so now with my left selection, I'm going to enable another modifier. Go to my modifier list, and I'm on the high poly tread. I'm going to title this real quickly. So tread HP for tread high polish or high poly, and then this plane will be tread low poly. So tread underscore LP for tread low poly. So back on my high poly, I'm going to unfreeze that, and I'm going to put on that, it's called FFD modifier. I'm going to go to box. In the box I can change this to dimensions, set number of points. I'm gonna just make all these 8. So that's gonna be a little more freedom as far as modifying. So now I go to my vertex mode. I select this, the first several, and with my move tool, and I'm gonna turn off my snaps. My snaps are on, so I'm gonna turn off the snap toggle, and then I'm just gonna move this up till it's about where I want it to be. And these images are gonna be a little bit off here and there, just because that's kind of, I mean, typically you're gonna have a slight variation between your angles. So what I'm doing here is I'm just kind of shaping it to closely resemble the shoe here that I had. Okay, so as you see, there's my there's that, and actually I'm going go down. Okay, so before I even do the FD, I want to actually add in this little stripe here, and so I can do that by selecting one, holding Shift, and selecting all of them. Alright, so then I'm gonna right click and go to connect. You also can do the Swift loop if you prefer the Swift loop, which typically I do, but that requires a little extra, a few extra steps to get that set up properly. So then I'm going to select OK on that. I'm going to move this up a little bit, and then what I'm going to do now is I'm going to chamfer that. I'm going to go back. I'm going to bring that chamfer amount to 0, and then I'm going to just ease it up a little bit. So something that's just going to be kind of this indent we can use to bake in later. So with my polygon selection tool, I click on one polygon, hold Shift, select the whole ring, as you can see there. And actually, I can go to my perspective mode at this point. I want to chamfer. I want to extrude that inward. So go to your group, change that to local normal, which will mean that each one will go relative to its own direction. And then you can move that in. So I want to move that in just a little bit. That's quite a bit too much. So make that 0, and I do want to go negative. Let's go. I have to type this in. -0.05. That should be pretty good. So now what's going to happen is later on when we bake stuff, we're going to have this little indent here for our stitches to follow along. Okay. So again, we have our so then we have to do our FFD modifier. Let's see. Okay. Yeah. So now we have our indent there. We can now go to our FFD modifier and our modify list, box, set number, go 8 by 8 by 8. Okay, it seems that we are not getting the right. I'll go ahead and we'll reset this. So I'm gonna go to my utilities, reset Xform to make sure that this is not giving me more issues. FD box, there we go. So sometimes you'll find that your software, your model is giving you some issues. Sometimes it's not cooperating the right way, and a reset Xform tends to kind of correct some of those issues you're having. And that's under the utilities panel, reset Xform, and then it'll come up here and you just convert to poly, and now it's kind of a fresh start. So again, I put my 8 by 8 by 8 modifier, go to my vertex selection mode. I'm going to just move this in place, move this one up. So I select all the vertex. I think this one needs to be moved up, and I select my move tool, and I just adjust it here and there to match the reference image I had from earlier. So now we have this curvature that seems pretty true. So what we want to do next is we want to copy this, and if you recall, our shoe now This other one seems to be pretty flat. So we'll just want to paste that. That doesn't seem to be working right. So again, I'm going to click here. I'm going to reset that. So reset selected. Let's try this again. Okay. Well, might just be easier to apply the modifier to this one, just match it. So FFD box, all 8s, hit OK, and then we'll, with our vertex mode selected, we'll just match the two together. This shouldn't be too much of an issue. Just try to get them as close as you can, and this will help give us a better bake later on. So now, as you can see there, they seem to be really close. Now I'm actually going to select both of these or convert them to level poly. And now, if you want to see how the baking works, and if you're eager to see how it looks in the as far as the process of baking, and I can show you that process really quickly. So I'm going to just test to make sure that it bakes well. I'm going to export out my Tread high poly first. I'm going to export selected. I'm just going to call this, I'm saving my shoe demo, call it Tread high poly, and there you go. And then I'll next do my low poly tread, export selected, tread, we'll call that Tread low poly. There you go, and that's done there. I'm gonna open up my Substance Painter in this situation. You may be using Photoshop, you might be using Marmoset, or you can be using 3ds Max for baking. But Substance Painter is my software of choice here. So once I get Substance Painter open, I create new. I'm going to select my Tread low poly. Open that. Okay, as you can see here, we have our low poly tread. Not terribly exciting, right? Alright, so now I want to bake. I'm just going to jack this up a little bit. Bake my maps. This might take just a moment. I want to bake the high poly. I don't need the ID. Okay, and so let's see how this looks just by default settings. So just like that, we now have our high poly tread, which is about 3,200 polygons, and we have baked it onto our. Let me see. Oops. Okay, so we have our high poly, which is about 3,200 or about 3,100 polygons. Our low poly, which is about 134 polygons. And so it looks really nice. It's low poly. If you want to see what the polygons look like, so yeah, here we now have a nice low poly sole for the shoe with a high poly look, just based off of what we just completed here. So so next video we will go on to continue to build the shoe up from the sole up, and and I think we'll look at starting kind of the toe area here, and then work our way back up through the tongue laces. So so hopefully see you guys in the next portion.